Number one, research must be meaningful. You see, these days, what we have is people do research, quote and unquote, publish because they want to be promoted. Oh, I'm assistant lecturer. In 3 years' time, after having my PhD, I want to be lecturer too. And they just do some research, publish them wherever, another 3 years. Oh, I'm going to lecturer one. Of course, the ultimate is professor. And unfortunately, we have so many of them, so many professors around now, and I begin to wonder what impact we are making. Yes, my letter of appointment said that as Vice-Chancellor, I must travel business class wherever I go. For the 5 years that I was in that university, I never traveled business class on the bill of that university because I know the university is resource poor. And instead of traveling business class, I would rather travel with 4 or 5 people on the amount that I was supposed to spend alone. But what we have these days is that a favored candidate can be scored 98, not necessarily because he or she is the best. Then a very good candidate who is not favored by representatives of Senate may be scored 40. I have experienced this. I'm a victim of this, so I know. So there's subjectivity in the way we assess the candidates. And I think that has to stop.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is the Education Podcast by CESDEV. I'm your host, Abdulsalam Amo. In this edition, we're being joined by the Vice-Chancellor of the Osun State University, Professor Labode Popoola. Good evening, sir.
Very good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm fine, sir. Thank you for joining
us. Great.
All right. So just going straight into the questions that we have for you. First of all, based on your experience over the years, what are the challenges or opportunities in heading universities in Nigeria?
Well, universities are actually one of the highest points in the educational system anywhere in the world. And to have the privilege to head a university comes with a lot of challenges. And of course, like you said, opportunities. And none of this is actually personal. The challenges are never personal and the opportunities are also not personal. Of course, one key challenge that everybody talks about is funding. I always query it, funding. What exactly do we mean by inadequate funding or lack of it? But everybody talks about it all over the world. We also have the challenge of the quality of human resource that we have within our university system. And I'm not talking about the students, I'm talking about people who actually work in the university. I always say that some people don't have any business working in the university because of the attitude to work, the issue of conduct, character, issue of their orientation to things, issue of university culture, because universities are founded on some culture. And once you deviate from those elements of the culture, then you can't get it right. Of course, we also have a problem of instability in our calendar, and that's very dominant in this part of the world. I'm not very sure it happens as frequently as it happens here in other parts of the world any longer. Yeah, of course, also we have the issue of the quality of the students. And going back to the first one, funding. I don't know how we want to have adequate funding when we still think in this time and age, tertiary education, particularly university education, should be free. It's an unpopular opinion, but that's the reality. That's the reality. Tertiary education, university education cannot be free. Somebody must pay for it. Some people must pay for it. Some organizations must pay for it. And you also asked about the opportunities. Yes, so many opportunities, an opportunity to also to be able to prove what you can contribute to the system, how you can add value to the system, an opportunity to change lives, to change orientation, an opportunity to contribute to national and societal development. So like I said, none of these, whether the challenges or opportunities, none of these can be said to be personal. Yeah.
Well, I'll just take it from where you just talked now about the issue of funding. How do we balance the quest to ensure that universities are self-funded and quality?
Well, you see, there is the issue of access to education. There's also the issue of quality of education. Then we also have the issue of funding. It's like a tripod. Each one of these is very important. Access to education, yes, we want as many people as possible to receive good quality education. But are we talking of education just for the sake of it? So quality also comes in. So you cannot sacrifice quality for access. In other words, you can't say because we want everybody to be educated, so we water down the quality. Then the third part is actually that of funding. The reality is that funding is very important. You know, any good education requires funding. Funding to be able to take care of the human resource, funding to be able to take care of the environment within which the university operates, funding to be able to take care of equipment, whether it's scientific equipment or other equipment, funding to be able to relate with other institutions. So those three have to be balanced. None of them should actually suffer. The moment one suffers, then you cannot have good education, particularly at the tertiary level.
All right. So you mentioned the issue of some people in the university system that are not supposed to be there. These are these kind of people. Among such things they do is engaging in acts of corruption. So how can we call corruption in university education?
Well, you see, there is something called autonomy. And if you look at the meaning of autonomy, it's straightforward. Self-governance. And self-governance should come with responsibility. But we interpret autonomy to some. So autonomy here is taken as freedom. Freedom to do whatever you like. But there is nothing like absolute freedom anywhere in the world. Okay, where your own freedom ends, that's where my own right starts. Okay, so we have a situation where you have people who have turned themselves into emperors, maybe in their faculties or in their departments, no good relationship with their students. And we are all in this business because of the students. If there are no students in the university, we'll just be doing research, and that will just be it. And the research cannot be meaningful. So there is that problem there, but you mentioned specifically corruption. Yes, from experience, and I think I've seen so much in the university system, there is hardly any position in the university system that I've not had the privilege of holding. And I know that there's corruption in the system. Corruption, but because of the so-called autonomy, we don't seem to, the society doesn't seem to know. If you're looking for this type of corruption, you find it in the university system. And I'm saying this with full authority with what I have seen. And it's a chain, right from the lowest to the highest. I'm not saying everybody in the system is corrupt, no. But the truth is that there is corruption in the system. Yeah, and because of the so-called autonomy, it's hidden. There's a veil. So the society doesn't see it, more so when people who work in the university system are respected. You know, we are looked up to as, look, these are people who should know it, people who, we are like men and women of God, if you like. I always describe the university as a monastery, something like a monastery where you have people who are pure-hearted, pure-minded, in the place, but that's not exactly what we have really. Yeah.
So within this system, within this autonomy that the university system, our university system in general has, how can we curb corruption?
Well, you see, we need to sanction. You know, there is, like the Yorubas would say, Iluti Osofin, Simbe. I hope I'm permitted to intersperse my submission with Yoruba, because some of these native issues, you don't find their equivalent in other languages. So the university is actually self-regulatory. Universities are operated on laws, they're operated on statutes, they're operated on conventions, and we have things that are supposed to check us. But now you have a situation where somebody is alleged, so to say, as sleazing the system, whichever way you want to put it, and you now start the process, or somebody cheats, or somebody takes money from students. And this happens a lot in many institutions, illegally. Now you give a query, the person heads to the court, and that stops the process. So we have the laws, we have the statutes that can check all these infractions, but they are very difficult to apply. Excuse me.
So now let's go to UNIOSUN or Osun State University, where you've been the Vice-Chancellor for the past 5 years. So what have been your impact in the administration of the university in the period we're talking about?
Well, this is not a straightforward question, and don't expect a straightforward answer. I cannot measure my own impact. I cannot. My friends, those who employed me, those that I worked for in the last 5 years, the society that pays to put the institution in place, the students are in the best position to actually assess my impact. But one thing that I do from time to time, I went to that place with a clear vision and a clear mission statement, not verbal, documented in black and white. And each time I go back to that document, have I done A? Have I done B? Did I do it the way I said I was going to do it? And largely, I want to say that up to 90% of the outlined vision and mission statement have been accomplished. I've put together my account of my stewardship, and virtually everything that is stated in that vision and mission document has been taken care of. I mean, I promised state-of-the-art laboratories. The laboratories that I'm leaving behind are actually better than the ones I promised, because I actually have the photographs of those that I promised I will put there. The ones I'm leaving behind are even better than the ones I promised. I promised a stable academic calendar. As we speak, that university is probably the only public university that has regular calendar. I promised staff welfare. Nobody can complain in that university that they have been poorly treated, whether in the area of promotion, in the area of remuneration. We pay salaries on the 25th of every month or earlier, and I've done that for 60 months without failing. I promised that we're going to renew the environment. If you get to any of our campuses, there is a marked improvement compared to what we had. I promised I was going to make the university a residential university. There were no hostels there. Every campus has a hostel today. And I promised that I was going to ensure that there's a student union in the university. There was none when I came. And today we have a vibrant student union and a student union executive in place. So I think I want to leave the rest to the owners of the university and the stakeholders of the university to talk about it as time goes on. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. So if you are just joining us, this is the Education Podcast by CESDEV, and we are being joined by Professor Labode Popoola, the Vice-Chancellor of the Osun State University. And from what he just said now, he told us some of the things he has done as Vice-Chancellor. His tenure ends on November 4, and hopefully another person come back who would succeed him by then. So now let's go to the next question, sir, which is the issue of the crisis of leadership across many Nigerian universities today. So we already emphasized the issue of autonomy earlier. We have many universities, including the University of, I think, including your university and some other university like that. That succession in leadership has been a problem. I don't know. I can't say it's a recurring problem, but this year we have University of Jos, we have Lagos State University, University of Ibadan, and as well as Osun State University that have the issue of leadership as a problem. Succession in leadership. How can the academics get things right?
Well, you see, again, we go back to what universities are for. Universities, of course, are also like the rest of the society, but with some distinctions. You see, why and how will people want to operate outside the rules and regulations of an institution? I was employed at the University of Ibadan on some certain rules and regulations and conditions of service. I was recruited as Vice-Chancellor at Osun State University on some certain rules and regulations, and of course on some conditions of service. Now, so why would I want to go against those rules and regulations or those conditions of service? This is exactly what is happening. Now, we cannot, of course, say that people should not have ambition. It's a normal feature in all human beings that we should have ambition, right? So it's legitimate, but ambition that will be destructive to a system is what I think is destroying the university system today. Osun State University wasn't my first attempt. Even at Osun State University, I had attempted earlier on, I think in 2012. It didn't favor me, and heavens did not fall. But God Almighty knew that I had a mission there, and it happened a second time, and we were able to get through that. I contested in UI before. For whatever reasons, it didn't come my way. And heavens did not fall because of that. Only one person will be Vice-Chancellor at a time. But in a situation where people want to disobey the rules and regulations that employ them in the first instance, or want to tweak it, or want to create a crisis, I still don't understand it. This afternoon, I was on a trip and I was discussing with some people with whom I travel that what exactly is the cause of all this thing? Is it that there's something in that office that is so attractive that people are even can even kill because of it? And I mean, I told the guy that I'm not sure I've seen anything spectacular about that office other than the fact that you are used and overused. The man just smiled and said, you are the one thinking that will people see what is there. There is so much, there are exercise of office there. And I now gave him examples. Yes, my letter of appointment said that as Vice-Chancellor, I must travel business class wherever I go. For the 5 years that I was in that university, I never traveled business class on the bill of that university because I know the university is resource poor. And instead of traveling business class, I would rather travel with 4 or 5 people on the amount that I was supposed to spend alone. I never had escorts. I picked my phones by myself. I didn't have a PA that would be picking my phones for me. I was living in my house. So I really don't understand it. Maybe I'm odd, but I don't see why there should be crisis of leadership in the system. If we allow the system to go the way it should, yeah.
We've already emphasized that if the system is allowed to run as it should, there shouldn't be any crisis.
There should not be any crisis.
So how should arbitration, remember there is a need to arbitrating when there are complaints and all that. How do we ensure that all these things don't snowball into leadership crisis?
Well, you see, again, part of the autonomy, part of the way we have abused the autonomy. Now, the autonomy document, particularly at the federal level, says that, oh, okay, universities can evolve their own leadership. Of course, you cannot do it alone. You have to do it in conjunction with the university council. And I ask people who appointed council. It's government. So it means we cannot leave government out of this thing entirely. The chairman of council is an appointee of the government, whether state or federal. There are other members of council, I think about 6 of them, who are appointees of government. So they also have input into the process. Now, the abuse of the autonomy that I talked of is what we have seen over the years. I have been on the selection panel. I was on selection panel in 2005 when Professor Bamiro was appointed. And my conscience is very clear that nobody was deliberately marked down. Nobody was deliberately marked down. I can say that now. I remember Professor Isaac Adewale also contested. And one question that I put to all the candidates was that, oh, okay, if you don't get it, who do you think should get it? And every candidate, except for one, said it should be Professor Bamiro. If I don't get it, it should. So Bamiro came first, and with a difference of about 4 points. But what we have these days is that a favored candidate can be scored 98. Not necessarily because he or she is the best, then a very good candidate who is not favored by representatives of Senate may be scored 40. I have experienced this. I'm a victim of this, so I know. And these things keep on happening. Now we are teachers. We grade on the basis of marking scheme or marking guide. If I'm examining students, I'm going to mark them using a marking guide. Will it be right for me to score a student who probably answered 3 questions instead of 5, give him or her higher scores than the student who answered 4 questions very well? So there's subjectivity in the way we assess the candidates. And I think that has to stop. That has to stop. So you asked about arbitration. How do you protest that? That, okay, they marked me down. And the only way you can actually do that is when you have objectively verifiable criteria. Objectively verifiable, that, okay, this item, you will be scored on it. That item, you will be scored on it. We don't have that yet. So if, for example, they are saying that, oh, if you have 20 good publications published in high impact journals, somebody can give me 5/10 and give another person who also has 20 publications 9/10. There's no way to verify this thing. Just marking down candidates subjectively. It's unacademic. It's unacademic. It's against, we don't swear to an oath to become academics, but it's against the culture. It's against academic culture. Subjectivity, being unfair to others, it's not, I mean, because how do you explain it? How do you explain it? I mean, candidates that have the same requirements that you asked for, of course, only one person will become VC. But in a situation where you score someone 80, you score another person with the same qualification, the same requirement, score that person 40. It's a bit it's strange to someone like me. I gave the example of Bamiro and Adewale. I think the difference between them was just 4 points because both of them were candidates, but only one of them had to be the Vice-Chancellor. Of course, eventually Adewale became Vice-Chancellor also.
So far you've made a lot of references to the University of Ibadan. To be recalled that before you became the Vice-Chancellor at UNIOSUN, you were once you were the pioneer director of the Center for Sustainable Development at the University of Ibadan. What has the center done over the years in achieving the SDGs?
Well, you know, the center was a unique creation because I'm not aware that there was any such center anywhere in Africa when we created it. And I think it's important that if you don't mind, I tell you some of the stories behind it so that people can have it in perspective. We competed for a grant. I was the dean of the postgraduate school then, and it was a MacArthur Foundation grant. And in the wisdom of the leadership of the university, I was asked to lead the team. And our UI team happened to be one of the 10 universities that won the grant, about $1 million grant. And that grant was supposed to be for one master's program, Masters in Development Practice, Masters in Development Practice program. Okay, and this is a program that's supposed to be multidisciplinary because we had courses in virtually all disciplines. Virtually all disciplines had courses. So now you cannot put such a program in a department or in a faculty because it will create conflicts and it will not run very smoothly. So what we now did was to propose to the university that we probably would need to have a center or an institute where we will have this unique program placed. Then we can pull resources from all departments or as many departments as are required in the university to come and support the program. That's how the idea of the Center for Sustainable Development came up. And of course, it got the approval of Senate. And I need to say that not only that program, MDP, now came on board. We had, I think, about 4 other programs, either had been conflicts where they were or they didn't have a home to domicile. We brought all of them together. And of course, the STAR program was the Masters in Development Practice. They were to address the Sustainable Development Goals. The center started in 2010, but the Sustainable Development Goals didn't start until 2015 September. But we had the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, which had similar objectives. Okay, so yes, right now, I know that we have been able to train so many students having broad knowledge of development beyond the traditional knowledge. Oh, you are either an economist and you're talking about development, or you are either a human nutritionist. And most of the times you look at it from your perspective. But now we have trained students who look at development holistically, look at development from the point of environment, from the point of politics, from the point of culture, from the point of even human relations, for the point of science. So they are like a complete set of human beings who now understand developments in all its ramifications. So that would be one achievement. The second achievement is the fact that this unique center is now being replicated in many other universities. I mean, as we speak in Nigeria, we probably have about 5, 6, 7 universities that have created similar center because of what they saw about the UI center. So many of our products are all over the place, working in NGOs, some having their own NGOs, some are teachers in other institutions. So through them, we are able to spread the gospel of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that is helping particularly in the area of establishing partnership, which is goal 17. Yeah.
I said that in your response just now, you made a reference to getting some grant from MacArthur Foundation and all that. So how can higher education in general, not beyond universities, how can higher educational institutions attract funding for research and development?
Well, you see, research is like an elite game. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. It's not just for all comers. And you can be a player in that game if you have trained yourself, if you have built your capacity in good grantsmanship, okay, capacity in understanding the language of funders. There are fundings all over the place, except that, yes, with COVID-19, these fundings are actually reducing. And many funders are scaling down because of the crisis of COVID-19, because they also get their funds from companies, from businesses to pull together to now fund research. But be that as it may, the funds are still there. But what I've discovered is that many institutions are not very strong in the area of grantsmanship, right? Even in Nigeria, the TED Fund has some grant, the National Research Fund. And the funds are sitting there. They don't have people accessing them. Or when people access them, many of the proposals don't make it. So I think it's important for every institution to try to build the capacity of their members of staff in the area of good grantsmanship. UI hasn't done badly in this, and I think I want to owe this to the research, the Office of Research Management in the University of Ibadan. And research management is beyond research. It's about how you even look for opportunities. It's about how you manage the research, how you manage the fund, how you report the outcome of your research. So every institution will have to do that. And I'm glad to announce that there is an outfit which is supporting institutions in West Africa, the West African Research and Innovation Management Association, WARIMA. I don't know if you have heard the name before. Yes, I was the first Secretary General, and I'm currently the President. And it's been able to help a number of institutions to build capacity in the area of grantsmanship. So for us to be able to make grants, we must understand how good proposals are written. And we must also collaborate with others. These days, you cannot stand alone. You cannot stand alone. Most proposals that win grants are not individual proposals. Funders want people to work together in teams, universities to collaborate. Yeah.
Okay. So can you tell us more about WARIMA?
Well, WARIMA is West African Research and Innovation Management Association, and it's a product of Association of Commonwealth Universities. I think it's the concern for poor research outputs, poor research outcomes, inability to manage research that actually brought this idea. And so through ACU, that's Association of Commonwealth Universities, these RIMAs, Research and Innovation Management Associations, were created in various corners of Africa. The first one was SARIMA, South African Research and Innovation Management Association. WARIMA was number 2, and I want to give the credit to Professor Olayinka when he was the Dean of the Postgraduate School. Through him, we started relating with WARIMA, and we have a very good working relationship. So we work together to get WARIMA to West Africa. And we also have in Central Africa, it's called CARIMA, Central African Research and Innovation Management Association. Then we have in East Africa, it is called IARIMA, East African Research and Innovation Management. So they just started that of North Africa, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, so every year we hold conferences, but because of COVID-19, that has not been possible. Then we also organize workshops, we organize symposia, we organize seminars, just to build capacity in research management.
Those that are interested in getting access to various research grants in various fields can check our website at educedef.com for more
Yes,
about
then
that?
you see, searching for research grant these days is so easy. I mean, just go online.
Yes.
Just go online. Just if you have a subject matter in mind, you can just Google, where do I get support for this? Of course, it does not mean that because you found it and you wrote a proposal, you get it. Like I said, it's an elite business. If you don't get it once, try again and again and again and again. Someday you will hit it. And the moment you start hitting it, it keeps on coming and coming and coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, sir. So this takes us to another related question about what should be the best practices in higher education research and development?
Number one, research must be meaningful. You see, these days, what we have is people do research, quote and unquote, publish because they want to be promoted. Oh, I'm assistant lecturer. In 3 years' time, after having my PhD, I want to be lecturer too. And they just do some research, publish them wherever, another 3 years. Oh, I'm going to lecturer one. Of course, the ultimate is professor. And unfortunately, we have so many of them, so many professors around now, and I begin to wonder what impact we are making. You see, if our research is not touching the society, I don't think we have anything to be proud of. Research must be meaningful, research must be impactful, and research must address key issues within the society. Many of the problems we complain about, and this is one other problem I have with the system now. The university is the only place I think I can survive. I'm not sure I can survive in business. I have a problem with the Nigerian university system. Go onto any WhatsApp platform or any social media group. You find out that we are the ones that are complaining about everything, including toilets not being good in our departments. And the question is, what are we doing? Because I think society should look up to us. We should address the problems of the society. We should help government to address the problems of society, but we are the ones that complain the most. Okay, yeah, everybody talks about the value of the Naira is nothing to write home about. But why are we not discussing it? Why is it that the Naira is so low compared to other currencies? Universities should be discussing it. We have an idea of the problem, but we also have an idea of the solution. We are not productive as a people. The only source of revenue we seem to depend on is crude oil. And crude oil doesn't have much value in the world market any longer. So dollar is not our currency, it's a foreign currency. And you cannot just move it to Nigeria without selling something, without producing something. These are things academics should be discussing instead of just laying the blame on government. We are talking of insecurity, right? Instead of the way we treat issue of insecurity, the first thing that comes to your mind when we talk about insecurity, people go in the area of ethnicity, they go in the area of religion. Instead of addressing the key issues, farmer herders problem. What is the root of this? Is it a new development? It is we in the academia that should unravel this. What is the role of climate change? What is climate change doing? How much harm is climate change causing? We are talking about food shortages. Oh, we say the prices of goods have gone up. I have an idea of the reason why. Government doesn't produce food. It's farmers that produce food. Last year, rain stopped in August, and we didn't have a drop of rain since after that. So most of the late crops failed. We in the academia are the ones that are supposed to address this instead of piling tension on government. So I'm a bit worried, and I think we're not doing enough. I hope we'll be able to, and the whole world is watching us, and our performance is not so impressive.
So let me play the devil's advocate in this case now. You said that.
Please do.
Okay. Some will argue that these researches are there, but government or the policymakers in general are the ones that are not doing the right thing. Because just about a month or two ago, there was a lecture at Osun State University where they discussed the I am a elder. That was the title of the lecture at the Danford University. And across other universities, there have been various discourses or conferences, our papers presented at conferences about various societal issues. So can we say that it's government that is not implementing the policy? Or
you see, the question is,
what should be done to make sure
that's right? My brother, the question is, who is government? Who is government? I think we have got to a point in our history that we have personalized government, even in the university system. Somebody has a problem with his promotion. He blames it on the Vice-Chancellor, forgetting that there are some players along the chain, from the department to the faculty to the college, before it gets to the Vice-Chancellor. And the Vice-Chancellor is the chairman of Appointment and Promotions Committee. Now, if we're talking about some of these problems are actually local problems. Local problems at the local government level. Local problems at the community level. Unfortunately, we blame it on Abuja. This is where I have issues. I read that story, it went viral, I'm a herder, but I am not very sure the kind of interpretation we are giving that there will be any government, no matter how irresponsible, I'm sorry that I have to use this word, that will actually want crisis to happen in this domain. I'm not sure there is any government. The issue is that the way we address some of these issues, we're actually using it to create more tension, right? Let me also play the devil's advocate, right? We assume that every herder is a Fulani man. And so the Fulani man is an enemy in Yoruba land or an enemy in Igbo land, right? We also assume that every herder is a kidnapper or every herder is a destroyer. I mean, these are just, I don't know how to put it now, these are just some perceptions that are creating more crisis. And of course, take it or leave it, politicians will latch on some of these issues and of course hit up the environment the more. Secondly, these people have been living with us, and I challenge you, go and find out. If you're talking about cattle menace in southwestern Nigeria, who are the owners of the cattle? They are mostly Yoruba people. If you are talking about the menace of cattle in eastern Nigeria, there's every good chance that the owners of the cattle are people from that part of Nigeria. So the herders are just like Danfo conductors. So we really need to address these issues. I am against free range or open herding. I'm against it. The whole world has moved. We have to start intensive breeding of some of these animals. The solution is not to say that people should not, Yoruba people should stop consuming cattle, so stop consuming beef, like the kind of thing we read. Now, if Yoruba people stop to consume beef, so many Yoruba people will be out of business. In a place like Iwo, they will be out of business, right? So many people will lose their livelihood. So we have to address some of these issues fundamentally. I'm a bit uncomfortable, and if the rest of the society is looking at these things from the simplistic point of view, I think that those of us in the academia should look at it more intensively, okay? And we should contextualize some of these issues instead of joining the rest of the society to just discuss it as if it's if they say that they want to increase the price of the pump price of fuel, the first thing I want to do is to go and look at the price in other parts of the world. But rather than doing that, we just jump to the social media and we start condemning government. Right now, we are spending so much money subsidizing fuel. It's the same thing about school fees in the university system. We condemn government the moment anybody wants to introduce fees, but we're only deceiving ourselves. We are deceiving ourselves. That's why we won't have good quality education. Because government must fix roads, government must take care of health. Unfortunately, government is spending heavily on security. So it's just not, and the money is not coming in the way it used to come in. So we have to be realistic. And I think the academia should take the lead in all these discussions rather than joining the rest of the society to heat up the system. My opinions are not usually popular, but I'm not sure I care. I mean, I have to say it the way I think it is.
So one more question before going to some other parts of the before we get into the closing of the discussion. So you made reference to funding in the university system earlier. So there is this issue around whether education should be free or should be, or education is expensive or should be free, or whether students should have to pay heavily to acquire higher education. Where do you stand about this?
Well, I don't know anywhere in the world that education, particularly tertiary education, is free. You see, we should stop deceiving ourselves. Somebody must pay. It's either the taxpayer or philanthropy or loans or scholarship. Look at something. I have challenged some of our colleagues. We all celebrate the fact that we also, of course, we also blame government that our medical doctors are moving to the UK. Why won't UK welcome them? Everybody likes cheap labor. To train one medical doctor in the UK, you probably need as much as what you need to train 50 medical doctors in Nigeria. I have challenged our colleagues who are medical people. Let anyone come out to say that for the 6 years of your program, you spent 3 million naira. Forget about food, because whether you are in school or not, you must eat. Forget about accommodation, whether you are in school or not, but in terms of what went into our education, all of us, we virtually enjoyed free education. And what this should amount to is for us to also show some patriotism. Stay back and serve the country. But we give all sorts of excuses, again, blaming government. Now you cannot have the so-called free education and expect things to move on very well, expect to get out of school and get a job. Because money that's supposed to be used to create jobs, to fix the roads, are being pumped into education. Education has to be funded, but it can't be funded by government alone. That is the truth. It doesn't happen in the UK. It doesn't happen in the US. It doesn't happen in many parts of the world. Somebody must pay. Government will play its part. Parents and the students must play their own parts. There must be scholarship. There must be philanthropy. There must be loans. But it's like we don't want any of these. That's where the problem really is. And that's why we have the kind of quality that we have.
There is always this, thank you very much for that. There's always this controversy around or dispute between staff unions in universities and the management of the universities. What's your experience like at the Osun State University?
It's a story I don't like to tell. You see, I have no problem with unionism. Unionism is good because, number one, it should attend to staff welfare. Number two, checks and balances in the system, right? But unions should not be seen as parallel management. That is what we have in many situations now. Unions are like parallel management in some institutions, quite a number of them. There are also situations where people get into unionism, they personalize it. In fact, it's become professionalized now. Somebody is an assistant secretary of a union. He graduates to become secretary. Then from secretary, he becomes chairman. Then when he leaves the chairmanship of the local chapter, he goes to national, as if it's a career. And I cannot understand this. Beyond the welfare of members of staff and checking the excesses of management, I'm not very sure the union should go beyond that. But in a situation where unionism is used as a weapon, you have a problem with a member of a union, maybe he's a chairman or he's an assistant chairman or whatever, they don't want to answer to their malfeasance, then they now use the union against the system. I cannot support that. So I had serious crisis, very serious crisis, to the extent of people writing spurious petitions against me. I don't know if you have traced my trajectory. I don't do deals. And I most of the things that people do, particularly with money, I don't do it. When somebody now writes, or some people now write petitions against me to cancel, they failed. They went to the House of Assembly, they failed. They went to EFCC, they failed. And they will not relent using the union. I don't think that is what we call unionism. So I have problems with unionism the way it is practiced now. Ordinarily, unionism is good. Welfare of members of staff, checking the excesses of management. Beyond that, nothing more.
Okay. So you've made reference to your participation in the selection of vice-chancellors in certain universities, I think Ibadan, Abeokuta, and some other places like that. So
no, only in Ibadan.
Only in Ibadan.
Only Ibadan. Yeah, but of course I had contested. Okay,
you contested at Abeokuta. So
I didn't contest at Abeokuta, I was searched.
Okay.
And I was also searched in Ilorin. I can't remember those years. Then, of course, I contested in UNIOSUN in 2012. I was elbowed. Of course, in 2015, nobody could do anything about it. So
what the question I was about going into was about the issue of the state of the case of specialized universities in Nigeria today. That's why I mentioned Abeokuta actually. So,
okay.
Do you think that they are still relevant in the scheme of things, or we should just have the conventional universities, considering the fact that in some cases, like in Yola, the Modibo Adama University has turned into a conventional university, and we have seen cases of other universities trying to do so. Do you think these specialized universities are still relevant?
Well, there was a purpose, or there were some purposes for creating them. And those purposes were based on exigencies of the situation. Yes, University of Agriculture. Yes, you want to improve agriculture. In other words, you should be training people that will be doing agriculture the way it should be done. Not training people to become professors or not training people to become PhD holders. Because this is where the problem comes in. Now, I had an experience lately. We're doing an interview looking for 2 people in agricultural engineering, and I had about 10 people with PhD. So they go to school, do first degree, second degree in agriculture. If they don't get things to do, they go ahead and do the third degree. And the next thing is they want to work in the university. That is what is making these specialized universities a bit irrelevant, because they are supposed to be field people. Go and operate in the field to solve key societal problems. Unfortunately, we lost that. Virtually all of them are becoming conventional. I understand FUTA now has medicine, MBBS.
Yes.
You have universities of agriculture doing accounting. Okay, universities like, so the whole thing is, like Fela said, upside down.
So that takes us to the issue of the proliferation of universities. So at the National Assembly, there have been efforts to create more universities and all such things like that. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I would rather not comment much about this. We are talking of a population of, they said we are 200 million plus. I don't believe it because there is no, I'm not sure we have really had the census that we cannot trust. We are only projecting and projecting. Yes, population is increasing, but I'm not very sure we're up to that number. And of course, if you don't know how many people you have, it's very difficult to plan. So it's on the basis of this that universities are proliferating, as it were. As we speak, I think we have almost 200 universities. Yeah. And some of them don't even have from 100 level to 500. Some of them don't have up to 10,000 students. So I would have loved that existing universities should be better equipped, possibly expanded. You see, the more universities you have, the more overhead you incur. Because you must appoint vice-chancellors, you must appoint registrars, you must appoint bursars, whereas 3 or 4 universities could have come together. One university, expand the scope of UI, expand the scope of OAU, instead of just creating more. But unfortunately, that's what we have. Then, of course, you can also not stop private universities being created. I don't think there can be a law to say it's like any enterprise. Many of them get there to find out that it's not as lucrative as we thought it would be. Yeah. So there, I don't think a law can be enacted to say that you cannot create. But of course, NUC should have some strict regulations and also strict monitoring and evaluation of the processes. Some of these private universities actually should not exist. I'm sorry I have to say this, because they actually have serious resource problems. Serious resource problems. And there is no way they can train good quality. Some of them are very good. In fact, some of them have been able to plan their activities so well. They are resource efficient. They are not as wasteful as public universities. But there are still so many of them that are resource poor, that cannot cope. That's the truth. They can't pay salaries. They don't have laboratories. They don't have good quality staff. So I think NUC should look into this.
One more question in relation to this. We've made some sufficient references to research in higher education. What's the place of teaching? How can we standardize the teaching system within our universities or higher education in general?
Well, in every country, there is usually a unified regulatory body, the type like NUC. NUC, for example, within some limits, regulates the curricula, okay? But of course, you can also domesticate your curricula in an institution. I mean, the way I would teach my own subject, forest economics, sustainable development, the way I would teach it in UI, which is in a particular agroecological zone, it's not the way I would teach it in the Sahel zone, but the curricula by and large are the same. So yes, we can regulate curricula, but at the same time, we should allow some flexibility in the way we teach some of these courses. Then there are so many great ideas coming up now. We shouldn't be so rigid to say that, oh, until NUC, for example, CESDEV, if we had waited for NUC, maybe we would have waited for another 5 years. Yeah, but now it's become so popular, every university is working towards it, and it is making impact. So there should be that, a little bit of flexibility. We can all have similar curricula, but at the same time, we should domesticate them based on the locations and circumstances that we are in.
I think that CESDEV is part of the faculty of multidisciplinary.
Yes, now. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, but the objective is still the same.
Okay. So on a closing note, what are your plans beyond your tenure as Vice-Chancellor?
I started cleaning up my office in UI room 112, Department of Social and Environmental Forestry over a month ago. I started cleaning it. So by the grace of God, on the 5th of November, I will be in my office in UI. Of course, the next steps I leave to God. Yeah.
Congratulations on a successful tenure and wish you all the best.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate this opportunity.
Yes, sir. So if you are, so far we've been discussing with the Vice-Chancellor of the Osun State University, Osogbo, Professor Labode Popoola, and we've talked about various matters. If you're just joining, you can watch the full episode and catch some other episodes as we move on weekly. So I've been your host, Abdussalam Amawu. Good night.
So it's not a question of where you study, it's a question of who you are. You may be in Harvard University and if you don't pay attention to your studies, you end up plunking. So it's not a question of whether it is delivered online, whether it is delivered in person. It's a question of your own dedication to your work. And the National Open University of Nigeria students are mature students. These are people who have already graduated from high schools. They are doing their jobs. They are mature people, and therefore they have a more focus on their study, and therefore they get their results better because they manage their times more efficiently than younger people who are in level 200 or 100 in conventional universities.